Hey guys, Macca here playing Cuphead. Welcome to the 4th video in the All Bosses series where I show you the tips and strats you'll need to make the bosses as easy as possible. In this video, I'll be showing off the casino, and more specifically, the King Dice boss and the Gauntlet that leads up to him. In this video, I'll give you a recommendation as to the easiest path and what things you'll need in order to get an A+. Now, first off, what I use for the Gauntlet is the pea shooter, the spread shot, invincibility, and coffee. These are the best all-purpose things you should bring in with you, although they are not the best thing for each level individually. Now, how does the Gauntlet work? Well, you're put on a table with 15 total spaces, and the King Dice gives you a dice to roll. Now, it might seem a little bit random, but there is an aspect of timing involved here, and you can get the exact thing you want every time as long as you jump as the number you want is disappearing from the face of the die. Your goal here is to get to the final space called fin and make sure you don't land on things like start over. There's also save spots in between each zone, meaning you can get to the end only fighting a total of 3 of the bosses. Additionally, some of the bosses have a heart over them, and this is randomized. You're going to probably want to have it so that the bosses you fight have a heart over them so you can get extra health for the end. Last but not least, you're probably wondering what bosses I would recommend that you fight, and without a doubt, in my opinion, the easiest are number 2, number 5, and number 8. Meaning you can get to the end of the Gauntlet only rolling 2s. Number 1, number 4, and number 7 are the hardest in my opinion, and then numbers 3, 6, and 9 are the middle ground, and for some people those might be easier than my recommended 2, 5, 8 setup. Also, what you can do is pause the game and retry, and keep retrying until the hearts land on the spaces you want. Although you'll probably never get the perfect setup, it's good to have at least 1 or 2 hearts in the proper spaces you'll be aiming for. Now, in this video, I'll be taking you through all 9 bosses, so let's get started with boss number 1, which I believe is pretty difficult. What you're going to want to do here is spend the majority of your time with your eyes on the 3 cups on the right of the screen. The first cup will aim on the ground and pour alcohol in front of you. The back cup will shoot alcohol up, and that will rain directly down on you. And the middle cup will throw these balls, these little olives with parryable middles, and they will fly around and shoot those balls at you. What I would recommend is just focusing on the cups and dodging them with your character in your peripheral vision, and you should be able to get it. Next up, we have boss number 2, which I believe is probably the easiest boss on the table as long as you are good with the lock system. What you're going to want to do is lock yourself into place and then shoot diagonally up using the pea shooter into the blue part of the stack. Eventually, the stack will open up and parts of the stack will come across the screen to the other side. Each time it's going to be a little different and a little random. So just make sure you give yourself space as soon as the stack opens up so that you have time to react to the stack coming across. Just keep shooting the blue with a diagonal pea shooter and eventually he'll go down, usually in about 40 seconds or sometimes even less. If you're really good here, you can use your additional X moves and you can actually make slight adjustments for when he's expanding to get him down even faster. In space number 3, we have the cigar. Now, this guy's not too bad, but there's a couple of moving parts. Number 1, he'll throw those fireballs at you. You might remember these movement patterns from the Captain Bryonybeard battle in World 3. Essentially, always make sure you're going under them when they're up high or over them when they're down low. When you damage him enough, he'll switch stacks, so just make sure that you have a clear space to jump over the cigarette butts and dash across, changing your shots accordingly, and using X moves whenever they're available to bring him down a little bit faster. The only thing that should be harming you here are those rotating fireballs, and they are a little bit tricky, but once you get the pattern down, they aren't too bad, and this is another boss you can take down in approximately 45 seconds. Next, we have space number 4, probably my least favorite space out of all of them. We have the domino with the spiky things. A lot of things are happening, but essentially there's a back wall with spikes, so you can't touch that. The domino that's swinging, you can't touch him either, so when you're trying to dash over stuff, make sure you have a good amount of distance to the left before you dash. He'll sometimes launch domino pieces that'll come around the screen, or sometimes he'll launch balls that bounce from top to bottom. Sometimes the bouncing balls that go from top to bottom will be parryable, so you can use that to your advantage. Feel free to use your invincibility if you want to maintain all of your lives. Use your tri-shooter, which ends up being a little bit more useful in my opinion than the pea shooter. although the pea shooter does decent damage if you jump a lot or shoot diagonally when you're standing underneath him. Eventually you'll bring him down in about the average 45 to 50 seconds. We have the magical rabbit. He has 2 attacks. One is the spinning skulls that will eventually stop, and in one of the 8 directions you'll be able to safely escape. And you can also use your invincibility here if you're uncomfortable making one of the jumps that are down and to the left or down and to the right, which are easily the hardest of the 8 positions. Additionally, he'll send a row of face cards, and the hearts are always going to be pink parryable objects. Make sure you're parrying those either going up or going down, and distance yourself from them as much as possible to give yourself as much reaction time, eventually taking him down in the average 45 seconds. Next, we have our first plane level, and this one's not too bad. First thing you're going to want to keep an eye on is all of the horses in the bottom of the screen. There's going to be riders with green, purple, and other colors of hoodies, but the only ones you have to worry about are the light blue ones, as they will shoot directly up as they come underneath you, so you'll want to make sure you shrink and dash forward when they do that. Additionally, the horse in front of you, which is the main target, will shoot these large presents at you. Those presents will explode into 8 directional horseshoes. One of the horseshoes will be parryable, make sure you take it out, and feel free to use your rockets or your nuke in order to take him out even faster. In between space 6 and 7, we had a safe space, but at space 7, we have this roulette girl, easily my least favorite and probably one of the hardest. What you're going to have to do is she'll either be dancing back and forth. As she's dancing back and forth, you're going to need to parry the poker chips in order to make platforms for yourself that you can then jump over her and dash. Now, her secondary attack, which is very hard to dodge, is a rain down of roulette balls. And what happens is there's a pattern, and it comes down as an upside down V. One of the balls will always be missing, so what you're trying to do is position yourself in the middle, find the missing ball, and then dash through the open space in order to keep yourself alive. The timing on this one's really tight for when you're trying to jump over her and parry the poker chips, so that's probably where you're going to lose a life. Now, if you're dead set on beating her, I would highly recommend that you use your X moves, but it also might be more useful to use the smoke dash versus the coffee in this scenario. Next up, we have Space 8, my favorite space because it's so easy. Just take out your tri-shooter spread shot, stand directly under the 8 ball, and unload facing up. The only things you have to worry about is the occasional cube that will come down somewhere near the center, and occasionally the 8 ball will open up and fire one homing bullet on you. So basically, for the most part, you can just stand directly under him firing up, and occasionally you'll have to dodge 1 or 2 things, but the pattern is super easy to read and very predictable every time. You'll take him out in like 30 to 40 seconds. Last but not least, we have space number 9, one of the most creative bosses in the game in my opinion, and for this one we are doing the match game. You guys should know this, and right at the very beginning you have to pay close attention because it'll actually show you all of the cards that are going to be in the background. What you need to do is parry the card to flip it over, and then parry the matching card to make the pair. When you make the pair, you'll enrage the monkey. He'll run around and shoot these like musical notes through his cymbals, and you have to dodge those. And then when you do enough damage to him, the cards will come up again, and you'll just keep matching and keep matching. If you make a mistake matching, that's alright. The monkey will get a little bit upset and begin to move a little bit faster, so he's a little bit harder to dodge, but making a mistake isn't really a big deal, and it shouldn't really cause you many issues. What your goal is here is to just keep unloading on him and try to flip over all the cards and make all the matches possible. Eventually, once you reach all of the cards matching, you can keep damaging him and it'll become a knockout. He'll leave the stage and you'll complete space number 9. Feel free to use your missiles or your nuclear bomb here in order to speed some of the processes up, especially if he becomes enraged and he becomes really hard to dodge, which shouldn't be too much of an issue. Either way, this level, although it is by far the longest out of any of the spaces, in my opinion, it's one of the easier ones and there's not really much to worry about. So you should be able to beat this and then move on to the final spaces. Now, as soon as you're close enough to get to the end, I would recommend trying to go for it. The one thing I would also recommend, though, is that if you're using invincibility like I recommended, make sure that it is fully charged. Take out your tri-shooter and just unload on the boss. What I would also recommend is that you use your invincibility right away and just keep unloading on the boss, completely ignoring the first round of cards. Now, what you need to do is he'll unleash some cards on you, and you want to position yourself as far away from his hand as possible because of how the cards come out. You want to be able to make sure you get enough clearance on the last card because of how the timing is done. If you're looking to get an A+, you'll also want to use your invincibility early on so that you can use an X move later on and get 6 out of 6 for that part of the scorecard. Just continue parrying the proper cards, making sure that you parry early so that you don't get hit by the cards, and you'll eventually beat him in about 40 seconds to a minute. If you complete him without getting hit, you'll also receive an additional 0-point achievement, and if you've completed the devil at an A ranking, you'll also get an achievement for getting all of the bosses in hell at an A rank. Thank you guys so much for watching. At this point, the only thing left is the final boss, and I'll have a separate video about that. Like the video, share it with a friend, subscribe for future content, and special thanks to the amazing people on Patreon for supporting the show. Peace.